Hey, Allie.
So we're watching these pictures out of Beijing, right? And I'm trying to keep track of who's there. Tim Cook's there, Elon Musk is there, Bessent is there, Marco Rubio's there. And Marco Rubio is one of the people in the cabinet who, a lot of people think is an adult in the room. And every time he's involved in stuff that Donald Trump does, unusual stuff, he always feels a little uncomfortable, right? Like the Zelensky stuff in the White House.
Yeah.
That picture you showed on Air Force One, where he was dressed up in a tracksuit. The sweatsuit, like Nicolas Maduro, same one that Nicolas Maduro was in the day he was captured.
Yep.
He also didn't look like he was enjoying that. Like he doesn't feel like he's in on the joke.
It didn't look like it was the right size, I'm going to be honest. But that's true with the shoes. Maybe they were a gift. It looked uncomfortable. Yeah.
He has changed, just in case you didn't see those pictures out of Beijing, he has changed into a suit and is now dressed a little bit like the Secretary of State might dress. You are looking at Xi Jinping. So, Jen, you have a great evening. Nice to see you. Thank you. And we'll see you tomorrow.
Sounds good. See you tomorrow.
All right. And what you're looking at right now, live pictures from Beijing right now, where it is 10 in the morning, and you are seeing Xi Jinping. There's a big American delegation there that has arrived ahead of President Trump, including Scott Bessent, Marco Rubio, and a whole bunch of them. We are just moments away from the first meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping since Donald Trump's last meeting with him, which was in 2017. I want to get a sense of what's going on right now. It's the morning in China. Momentarily, we will see that. We might be seeing that's the advance in the motorcade right now. That's it right now. So Donald Trump getting ready to pull up. Let's go to Laura Barron Lopez. She's in Beijing right now. Laura, we're going to keep this picture up. What's going on there?
Hi, good morning. Allie here from Beijing. So right now, the president is expected to arrive momentarily at the Great Hall of People, not far from here in Beijing. That's where China has legislative events. It's where their legislature meets. And already in place is the U.S. delegation. That includes Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, as well as the president's son, Eric Trump. And so this is the ceremony, which is typical fashion for China, especially when welcoming President Trump, has a lot of pageantry and ceremony. And then shortly later this hour, the president is going to have an extended bilateral with President Xi Jinping. And what's on the agenda here? Well, what's expected is that there are going to be sales. The president is expecting China to purchase some billions in American soybean products, Boeing airplanes and parts, as well as beef products. But when it comes to what the president is really going to be pushing Xi Jinping on, obviously Iran is looming large here. And so we heard Secretary of State Marco Rubio talk about this a bit with Fox last night. But again, it's something the president has said he's going to bring up. They're going to have a long talk about Iran, namely whether or not China is going to help the U.S. in trying to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Because as you know, Allie, China, a lot of their oil imports come through the Strait of Hormuz. So that's going to be big. And then another thing is obviously the president brought along more than a dozen U.S. CEOs with him, CEO of NVIDIA, who joined last minute, as well as the Tesla CEO Elon Musk, Apple CEO Tim Cook. And so he's going to be pushing China to try to open up their markets even further to these companies, in the case of NVIDIA, to their chips that are big in the AI boom. But again, there's a lot of assets the president has on the table here. In exchange, China is going to be wanting some kind of concessions, or is going to at least be pushing for some kind of concessions on Taiwan and Taiwan's independence. And the president has said he's going to talk to Xi Jinping about it, even though U.S. officials have maintained that the status quo is going to stay the same when it comes to the U.S. position on Taiwan. But I think when we take a step back, Allie, and we talk about the way that the Trump administration has changed their position towards China compared to the first term, in the first term, their national security assessment, they described China as a geopolitical competitor, one that the U.S. needed to confront head on. And now they view it much more as just an economic competitor. And you see that with the president really leaning on Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent in terms of that, Bessent being one of the lead negotiators in talks with China consistently versus the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Now, Rubio is here this time, but he hasn't been as involved in the lead up. So some of the former national security advisors that I've talked to, including ones that advised the president during his first term, are a bit concerned with what exactly the president may be willing to give to get some help from China on Iran. How far is the president willing to go on that front? And so that's, of course, one of the big things that we're going to be watching here is how much Iran dominates these talks or not. Allie.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a metaphor or not, but Marco Rubio's blocked in that shot by the pillar. Behind him is Jensen Huang of NVIDIA. Elon Musk is there. Next to Elon Musk is Tim Cook. So you're right in pointing out this is very much a business trip, although Xi Jinping just shook hands with Stephen Miller. It's a bit of a mystery as to why Stephen Miller's there. Stephen Chung, the White House, one of the White House press officials, he's shaking hands with Xi Jinping right now. Stephen Chung, known for his fairly profane social media posts, so I think he's going to try and withhold from swearing at this point. Eric Trump now meeting with Xi Jinping. Eric Trump, no apparent reason why he's there. He claims he's not doing business while on this trip, but that's also remains unclear. Laura, thank you for this. We'll continue to stay in touch with you as this meeting develops. The two leaders are now heading inside, presumably to begin their bilateral meeting. Laura Barron-Lopez for us in Beijing. We're going to continue to monitor the events in China. We will bring you the meeting between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping when it begins. But first, if you watched this carefully choreographed arrival of Donald Trump and his entourage in Beijing, prior to this part, which was fully militarized, so there's no people there. In the beginning, there were crowds, there was applause, there was a ceremonial welcome on the tarmac when the president's plane landed. Hundreds of children cheering and waving. They were waving American flags and Chinese flags. Trump probably took that as a sign of his strength. King's welcome, basically. But don't be fooled, because this spectacle could literally be the only thing that the Chinese end up giving Trump as this summit unfolds and the crisis of Trump's own making with the war in Iran continues. Donald Trump was supposed to go to Beijing earlier. He delayed the trip from earlier this year because the expectation inside the White House was that by now, Iran would have capitulated. Tehran would have surrendered its nuclear stockpile, reopened the Strait of Hormuz, and handed Trump a major geopolitical victory to showcase on the world stage before he sits down with America's greatest competitor and adversary, China, President Xi Jinping. Spoiler alert, none of that happened. The backdrop to this summit could hardly be worse for Donald Trump. He's mired in a war of his own making, still with no end in sight, as Iran's nuclear stockpile remains unaccounted for, and the Strait of Hormuz, which has never been closed before, remains closed with no plan to reopen it. But there's more. Brand new economic fallout tied to Trump's war and tariffs are having a massive impact on Americans at home. Wholesale inflation, it was a brand new report today, signaled even more pain to come. The Wall Street Journal reports that April price increases lifted the annualized producer price index inflation rate to 6%. That's the highest reading since December of 2022. That follows consumer inflation numbers, which were published on Tuesday, which also emphasized how much higher energy costs are driving prices across the economy. Now, to really understand the economic crisis that Donald Trump has created, I want to give you a quick explanation of the difference between these two inflation measurements. The Consumer Price Index, called CPI, measures what American consumers pay for things like gas, groceries, rent, clothing, sort of a basket of goods. It's basically inflation from a consumer perspective. The Producer Price Index, PPI, is wholesale inflation. It measures what businesses are paying before products ever reach consumers, things like raw materials, shipping, wholesale goods. So CPI tells you what inflation looks like at the checkout counter. Yesterday, we got news that that figure rose 3.8% last month compared to the same time a year before. 3.8% is the fastest rate that the CPI has increased since May of 2023. As for PPI, the wholesale inflation, the producer price index that we saw the number for today, the 6%, that's an early warning sign of where consumer prices might be headed next, because in most cases, a business has to pass those increases over to its consumers. Some companies can afford not to. Most companies can't. Trump repeatedly downplays inflation risks for Americans and the toll that higher prices have had on their finances. Just yesterday, Trump said, quote, inflation is short term. This week's inflation report shows that's not likely true. We are definitely going to see more to come because of those wholesale inflation numbers. Even the folks at Fox couldn't deny the economic reality.
Food prices, grocery prices, core inflation, those numbers are up.
We are now deeper in the red. Markets do not like what they're seeing.
This is pretty devastating, actually.
Even Fox gets the economic reality. But Donald Trump clearly doesn't because of something he said yesterday. We talked about this last night. It's shocking even by Trump standards. He's invented this false binary that we either stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon with which it can strike America, or the economy takes a beating. And so answering a question about negotiations with Iran and repeating the BS that a nuclear Iran was on the line, the president of the United States said this.
When you're negotiating with Iran, Mr. President, to what extent are Americans' financial situations motivating you to make a deal?
Not even a little bit. The only thing that matters when I'm talking about Iran, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I don't think about Americans' financial situation.
I don't think about Americans' financial situation. New CNN polling shows that Americans feel abandoned by a president who promised to lower costs and improve their lives. You don't see numbers like this. 70% of Americans disapprove of Donald Trump's handling of the economy. This is a benchmark that has never crossed 50%, even in Donald Trump's first term, even during the pandemic. 77% of Americans, including a majority of Republicans, say that Trump's policies have driven up the cost of living in their own community. 69% of Americans believe the United States will be headed into a recession within the next year. We have a president who said on camera yesterday that he doesn't care about Americans' financial situation. Voters can hear him. In an interview with my colleague Alex Tabbitt, one voter said this about Donald Trump's statement.
When he says that he doesn't think about Americans' financial situations, what is your reaction to that specifically?
I think that's a true statement. Because, of course, he's not thinking about us at all. So, yeah. So that's my feeling.
What do you think he's thinking about instead?
Excuse me?
What is he thinking about instead?
He's only thinking about his own power, not us at all.
He's only thinking about his own power, not us at all. That's the reality overshadowing this summit tonight, this very, very important summit tonight in Beijing. Two global leaders projecting dominance and control. But for Trump, here's the reality underneath it all. A costly war with no endgame, rising inflation that economists warn could get even worse, and a growing sense among many Americans that the sacrifices being demanded of them are disconnected from the problems that Donald Trump actually promised to solve and got elected to solve. Tonight, Donald Trump wants this summit to look like a demonstration of his strength, but the question hanging over all of it is whether Americans watching back home see strength or they simply see a president increasingly trapped inside the crisis he created and only thinking about himself. Joining us now is the Democratic Congresswoman Madeleine Dean of Pennsylvania. She's a member of the Foreign Affairs and Appropriations Committee. Congresswoman, thank you for joining us. Look, this is a tough one because this is really important. A meeting between the President of the United States and the Premier of China, which is our adversary and yet one of our biggest trading partners. There are really important agenda items to discuss. And Donald Trump is going in with his tail between his legs.
It is really important. And I have to tell you, you know this about me. I don't like saying that a president overseas on such an important summit is in such a weakened position. But that is the truth. That customer at the gas station right there got it right. The president was telling the truth when he said, I don't think about Americans' financial situation at all. I don't think about anybody, was the next thing he said. Unfortunately, here we are with the president with this important summit with Xi Jinping. He is weakened with a 70% disapproval rating. I don't know numbers like that. The important issues that we want him to be facing with Xi, with strength, he can't. IP theft, fentanyl precursors coming to the United States, and so many other things. Humanitarian violations by China that we are always fighting. He doesn't have the credibility because of the rubble of what he has done. Here he is at war in Iran. He's trapped. He doesn't know how to get out of it. He's actually over there going to ask Xi Jinping to help him get through the Strait of Hormuz, and to get somehow out of the corner that he is in the war in Iran. So I don't like to report on it, but it is true. The president
I agree with you.
In a weakened position. I don't like it. I want people to understand that.
I would like the president to be successful in this mission. China is an important country. We have to take everything about it seriously. But again, I don't wish to bore people with economics, but they don't need to hear it from me because they pay for their own gas. 3.8% consumer inflation, 6% wholesale inflation. There are probably a handful of companies in America that can say, I'm not passing the 6% off to my consumers. Most businesses can't. In fact, the example in your district, small businesses can't do that. If they pay 6% more for something, the customer's going to have to pay 6% more for something.
They have to. Absolutely. In my district, I think you know it fairly well.
Very well,
Gas is at $4.69, $4.79. I whipped in the other day because I found $4.59. But I'm talking to colleagues here in D.C. We're in session now in D.C. People are paying $6 a gallon, $7 a gallon, and more. The American people are feeling it. The president does not care. The other sad thing is I was thinking about the contrast between Xi and Trump. Xi, as you know, is high on the idea that the West is in decline and the East is rising. I don't buy that, but that is something that he is quite high on. The president, unfortunately, looks at the very short term. Xi looks at the very long term. In terms of Taiwan, very importantly, what are we doing with Taiwan? We have the president has signed and approved $11 billion worth of weapons sales to the island of Taiwan for its important defense, and we want to be a partner in that. And yet we know that the next $14 billion hangs in the balance, and Xi is going to play with that. The president also knows that he is in a corner with Iran. And so for the president, knowing that our own economy in America is in such a precarious place, prices on everything up, Xi can see that and see the weakness of this president. What I hope, and what is sad to me, is that you described who was there with the president. Why is it that Marco Rubio, that a Secretary of State is not leading in this position? We worried a long time ago when he was also made the archivist and a few other things that maybe that wasn't a good idea. It is not a good idea that we have some business people, some family members trying to cut deals. It's all about business with this president. It is all about the grift. And the president is also in this weakened, boxed-in position.
Well, the Marco Rubio thing is its own mystery, right? I mean, he's not leading the discussions with Iran. We've got Tweedle Kushner and Tweedle Witkoff handling that. So I'm always puzzled as to why the Secretary of State's always an afterthought in this administration. But your point about Taiwan is really important because right now the United States has an official policy of sort of the status quo. Nothing should move as it relates to China and Taiwan. Right. Xi Jinping just needs one word in the American position to change, that the United States is opposed to Taiwanese independence. Donald Trump needs a lot more from Xi Jinping than Xi Jinping needs from Donald Trump at this moment.
Oh, it is upsetting and disappointing, the balance that we are watching here. And I'm actually quite worried about it. As you know, I serve on appropriations, but also on foreign affairs. Yep. And so our allies in that region are paying close attention. Of course, obviously, Taiwan is paying close attention, but all of our allies in the region want us to be strong, want us to get back to that indispensable nation that Madeleine Albright talked about, that Henry Kissinger represented when you think about talks with China. But obviously, we are in a different position right now. I hope we get out without as much difficulty as we can, but I am very worried about what happens in Iran. If we need Xi to help us get out of a self-inflicted war in Iran, where we have lost service members, 13 service members, where more than 100 school children are dead, thousands of civilians are dead. And of course, the rubble that this administration leaves behind in its wake is a serious problem. I don't want to be beholden to Xi to get us out of a war of President Trump's making.
That we didn't need to be in. I completely agree with you. Congresswoman, nice to see you. Thank you for being with us tonight. Pennsylvania Congresswoman Madeleine Dean. She's a member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. You're looking at pictures out of Beijing where it's 10:19 in the morning. Donald Trump and Xi Jinping, the premier of China, have begun discussions. This is a high-stakes meeting amid as the Congresswoman said, a very unpopular war that Donald Trump is desperate to end and that has isolated America from its allies and weakened the U.S. economy and in some cases, the global economy. How's this all going to play out? Bobby Ghosh and Justin Wolfers join me after the break. Hi, Donald Trump's in Beijing. Let's take a look. This is the room that the officials are in. You see Scott Bessent right there in the center of the room. Marco Rubio's just off to the side. Stephen Miller is in that shot. All those people you saw outside are now in this room. This may be the most consequential foreign policy summit of Donald Trump's entire presidency. But ahead of his arrival, the New York Times editorial board released some sharp criticism in an opinion piece titled, "Trump's China Policy Has Weakened America," calling him out for alienating allies who could help the U.S. with some valid pushback on Beijing. They write, his failed tariffs proved ineffective at intimidating China even before the Supreme Court ruled some of them illegal. In response, China restricted U.S. access to valuable rare earth metals and learned just how much leverage it has. The Times editorial states that the biggest risk in this summit is that Trump could trade short-term American gains for long-term Chinese advantages. It continues, quote, his war in Iran has hurt the American economy, and he reportedly plans to lobby Mr. Xi to buy more American goods in agriculture and other sectors. In exchange, Mr. Xi wants weaker American support for Taiwan and even more access to American semiconductors. Either of these exchanges would be a bad deal for the United States, end quote. Ryan Hess, the director of the China Center at the Brookings Institution, wrote this in The Atlantic, quote, China's leaders and their advisors often describe America as declining but dangerous, a late-stage power prone to bursts of aggression in the hopes of arresting its slide. China's restraint should not be seen as a sign of weakness. Instead, the country is biding its time, positioning itself as the ready choice to fill a leadership vacuum when the United States flames out. End quote. Wow, what a sentence. Positioning itself as the ready choice to fill a leadership vacuum when the United States flames out. What an assessment. China's leadership believes it doesn't need to defeat the United States in any fashion directly. It simply needs to wait for America to weaken itself through division, dysfunction, and political instability, all things that Donald Trump exacerbates. And with the future of the global balance of power on thin ice, there are growing concerns tonight about how the Trump administration is treating the summit itself, and whether Donald Trump and his family are using the summit to advance their own personal business interests. You saw this in the picture. According to the Financial Times, Eric Trump traveled with the U.S. delegation to China while a business group connected to the Trump family is pursuing a deal there. A spokesperson for Eric Trump has said that he will not participate in any discussions or meetings related to any business entity. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble delivering that with a straight face. But it gets to a larger issue surrounding Donald Trump. Where exactly does American foreign policy end and the Trump family business begin? And does Donald Trump only view American foreign policy in terms of how it serves the Trump family's bottom line? Questions that are all the more chilling when dealing with the United States' #1 geopolitical rival, China. Joining us now is Bobby Ghosh, a geopolitics analyst. He's the author of Ghosh World Substack. Justin Wolfer is also with me. He's a professor of economics and public policy at the University of Michigan. He's the founder of Platypus Economics, named after the said platypus, and he's teaching economics to the broader public on Substack and YouTube. Welcome, guys. Good to see you both. Justin, I'm sorry, you've been spending a lot of time with me today. We spent a whole lot of time on a show together. We're looking at these pictures. You brought up an interesting point earlier, why this is different from our historical geopolitical foes, and that is during the Cold War, we didn't do anything with the countries behind the Iron Curtain. We did not trade with them. We did not have exchange with them like this. We buy everything from China. We are dependent on China. We are codependent with China. So this is a very complicated setup.
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, by the way, just reflecting on my own personal life, codependence isn't all that bad. I'm codependent on the missus, and we get along pretty well together.
Good point.
You know, look, I'm an economist, and so Bobby's going to give you more of the geopolitics, but I don't like the idea even of calling China an adversary. The Chinese people are a wonderful people. Our economies are deeply intertwined. We do a lot of stuff that helps them. They do a lot of stuff that helps us. All of this occurs through the rivalry, through the lens of sort of great power rivalry, and honestly, sometimes just the president wanting to push America's problems out to others. But there's a great deal that the United States gains from our work with China, and vice versa.
So, Bobby, help us with this, because I wonder when you go out in the street and you ask 10 people how to describe China. Are they an adversary? Are they a rival? Are they a competitor? Are they how should we be thinking about this? Because this is a very important meeting between two great powers.
I think Justin is exactly right. The trouble is that American politicians don't talk like that. They don't tell when they're speaking to their constituents. When the president of the United States speaks from his bully pulpit, he's not saying that we have.
Bobby, hang on a second. Let's just listen to the president. I'll come back to you in a second. Donald Trump speaking.
I would call you, and you would call me. Whenever we had a problem, people don't know. Whenever we had a problem, we worked that out very quickly, and we're going to have a fantastic future together. Such respect for China, the job you've done. You're a great leader. I say it to everybody, you're a great leader. Sometimes people don't like me saying it, but I say it anyway because it's true. I only say the truth. And I just want to say on behalf of all of the great delegation that we have the greatest businessmen, the biggest, I guess the best in the world. We have amazing people, and they're all with me. Every single one of them. We asked the top 30 in the world, every single one of them said yes. And I didn't want the second or the third in the company. I wanted only the top. And they're here today to pay respects to you and to China. And they look forward to trade and doing business. And it's going to be totally reciprocal on our behalf. So I really look very much forward to our discussion. It's a big discussion. There are those that say this is maybe the biggest summit ever. They can never remember anything like it. I can say in the United States, people aren't talking about anything else. But it's an honor to be with you. It's an honor to be your friend. And the relationship between China and the USA is going to be better than ever before. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Press.
Thank you, Press.
Thank you, Press.
All right, Bobby, that was interesting. Not exactly the same conversation he had with, for instance, Volodymyr Zelensky in the White House. This is interesting because this is a president who came into office and literally one of the first thing he did was impose some of the biggest tariffs ever on China. Now, to Justin's point, those things are separate. You can have friends and have tariffs on them too. But Donald Trump has set a tone here that is not necessarily how he talks about China in the United States.
No, he's playing the flattery card, which is one of his go-tos. He does this from time to time when he thinks he can get something from it. We've seen nothing from Xi Jinping throughout his long career to suggest that flattery works with him. He tends to be much more cold-eyed in his geopolitical calculations. I think the big part of the reason why Trump has changed his tune, it's not even to do with Iran. I think this tune had changed even before Iran. He learned at his great expense last year that if you hit at China, China punches back. And I'll try this for an analogy. Rare earth minerals were China's Strait of Hormuz. And yes. China demonstrated that last year. And that was a wake-up call for Donald Trump. And we've seen reporting from within the White House going back long before the war in Iran, that the president was beginning to back off his rhetoric on China, and that he was telling people around him, he was telling his administration, his officials, to ease up on their anti-China rhetoric. So he was already in this posture before the war in Iran started. The war has made his dependence on China even greater. He's now, the president is clearly looking at his legacy. He wants to go out on some kind of a high, and he realizes that Iran is going to be a major, major blot on his legacy unless he can get it fixed quickly. He recognizes that Xi Jinping, if Xi Jinping wants to, can help him. I'm not sure Xi Jinping sees it that way, but that's the president's calculation. That's typically when he starts flattering people, when he wants something from them.
Guys, I'm going to ask you to hang on for a second. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and continue our conversation with Bobby Ghost and Justin Wolfers. When we come back, we want to talk about the economy. The economists knew Donald Trump was lying when he said he'd bring grocery prices down on day one. What else were they right about?
Trump's cuts are threatening hospitals and ERs. Coverage is